Roanoke Ridge, surrounded by a beautiful landscape with its woods, rivers and waterfalls. Many enjoy the trails of the area and it's frequented by travellers. It's laden with wildlife, making it a favourite hunting ground for those of the sport. But for others who dare to venture in the dark, there is something more than just a Murphy Brood to be cautious of. You're listening to Phil of Philby Gaming and welcome to today's video. Ghosts, the haunting of Roanoke Ridge. If you venture through the woods of Roanoke during nightfall, you may get an uncomfortable feeling that you're not alone. The howling of the wind, the rustling of the trees, the snap of a twig in the distance, something eerie is in the air. But is it just one's mind simply playing tricks upon itself, or is it something more? Roanoke Ridge does have something of a ghost story, as told in local theatres, but is it just that, a ghost story intended to frighten young children? Let's take a look at the motion picture itself, titled The Ghostly Serenade.
Greetings and salutations, gentlefolk. This here's the story about a young couple from the village of Annisburg that was courting a few years after the Revolutionary War. Courting in the woods, as you know young people are wont to do. Stealing away all sneaky-like. Girl by the name of Ethel Beauchard snuck out of the parlor one evening just as soon as her mother went out to hang clothes on the line from the washing. She met up on the road by her farm with a boy by the name of Eugene Hutton. Now, the Hutton boy was an athletic chap, liked boxing, fishing, and swinging Indian clubs. It's quite singular to the story that he didn't seem all that inclined to go to war in the preceding years leading up. Well, they walked in the woods for a while. Pretty soon they lost their bearings and no longer knew the north from the south, nor east from west neither. Then they heard a low moaning sound.
"What's that terrible noise?"
She said all the truth. "Must be a sick calf looking for its mama. They've been known to bawl like that. Let me take a look," said Eugene. Well, old Eugene went and disappeared around a tree, came out the other side, and gave her a terrible fright. Boom! She let out a shriek, then went to chastising.
"You should be ashamed of yourself, Eugene Hutton," she said. "Instead of giving a girl protection, you go carry on acting foolish and fresh like the Queen's prize jester."
But right then and there, a chilly wind blew through and knocked off Eugene's hat.
"I need to get back home. My mama has a terrible temper. She's like to stomp up and down if she finds out we're missing."
She is a fair, stout woman, Eugene noted. But just then, before this couple of miscreants could head home, they heard the sound of heavy wheels, groaning, and people marching. The cacophony grew closer and closer, and through the fog they could make out the shapes of ghost horses pulling spectral cannons, and dead soldiers marching as if their graves could no longer contain them, each wearing a vile red coat. "You will pay for your moral transgressions," the dead soldier howled, and cut his head clean off. Miss Beauchard shrieked in horror as Eugene's head landed right in her hands, his eyes still darting about, attempting to discern what horror had transpired. Little Miss Ethel Beauchard ran as fast as she could, stumbling and getting caught on trees as she tore through the forests. Terrified for her life, the dead soldiers marching after, hungry for blood. When she returned home, she told the people of the village that an army of the dead had taken Eugene within the confines of the fog. British soldiers who died protecting tyranny were rising from their graves as if to continue the fight for the demonic English. The townspeople erupted in fright and dismay until one doubter came forth and accused her of witchcraft. "She raised the dead to murder that boy for his pursuit of unwanted advances," he said. "So she too must perish." And that very night, they put her to the stake and burned her dead. Now let that be a lesson to you young ones not to go courting in the woods, in case the English lurk there still.
As the motion picture closes, the narrator reminds the younger viewers how this is a lesson not to venture into the woods, as the ghostly figures of the British Army still roam the area. Once again, is this just a story intended to frighten young adults into reconsidering running off together? Well, let's take a wander into the woods ourselves and listen closely. Although the whispers are sometimes mumblings, there are a few that stand out a lot more clear.
What's that terrible noise? You should be ashamed of yourself, Eugene Hutton. I need to get back home.
Must be a sick cat looking for his mom. They've been known to bawl like that.
Another thing to note is that when Arthur is experiencing this paranormal activity, there are other civilians in the area who don't seem to either notice or at least acknowledge this. But at one point, a man passes by on horseback, and although he doesn't seem to hear the ghostly sounds, his horse whinnies when the whispers of the lady occurs, and people do believe that animals can sense spirits.
You should be ashamed of yourself, Eugene Hutton.
The motion picture of the ghostly serenade depicts a young Ethel Beauchard and her secret lover, Eugene Hutton. Eugene seemed to be an objector and refused to fight for his country during the Revolutionary War, but was still later killed by the ghosts of the British soldiers, showing that he could not escape his fate in the end. And later, after Ethel returned to her home in Annesburg, she would be burned at the stake after an accusation of witchery. Are the voices we hear in the woods the ghost of the young couple slain, or is it just the imagination of Arthur after watching a spooky movie? Let me know your thoughts below. If you enjoyed today's video, albeit a short one, think about sticking around by subscribing for more content such as this. Do you have any stories you'd like more details on? You can let me know by getting in touch over on my Instagram. That's @PhilBGaming. You've been listening to Phil. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.